Crisis communicators are made, not born. I'm Edward Segal, a leadership strategy senior contributor for Forbes.com, where I cover the latest crisis and leadership-related issues, news, and topics. I'm also the author of the best-selling and award-winning book, Crisis Ahead: 101 Ways to Prepare for and Bounce Back from Disasters, Scandals, and Other Emergencies. My guest today is Mitch Marovitz, a collegiate professor and director of the Communications, Journalism, and Speech program at the University of Maryland Global Campus. He'll discuss how the university educates students to be crisis communicators and the important lessons government and corporate executives can learn from its approach to crisis communications training. Well, thanks for joining me today on the Crisis Ahead podcast, Mitch.
Thanks for having me, Edward. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Now, tell me, how is the University of Maryland preparing students to communicate about a crisis or manage one?
Right. So I'm glad, that's a great question. And so our master's degree program, we have a master's degree in strategic communications, total of 36 hours, and 6 of those hours are dedicated to leading and managing a crisis communication effort. I would like to also point out that the university does offer a master's degree in management with a specialization in emergency management. So there's a couple of, we're developing leaders in emergency management. And then also my students are in the crisis communications arena.
Well, how much of the instruction is done in the classroom versus online?
So most of our instruction is done online. Would like to point out that on occasion we do have hybrid courses, which are a mixture of online and face-to-face. But usually, though, that is usually only in the first course, the foundations course of the degree program. So the vast majority of our education is online.
Are students required to take courses before they're able to enter this program?
So when they enter obviously they have to have a bachelor's degree. And then their first course is going to be a leadership communications course that every graduate student in the university has to take. And once they successfully complete that, then they can start the 5-course curriculum in strategic communications. Our students take 5 6-hour courses in strategic communications, so for a total of 30 hours in the field, and then the 6-hour university course.
And what are some examples of the different types of crises for which the students are being trained?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I'm so glad that you asked that, because I think that it's important to understand that as a university, we're kind of focused on educating our students to deal with the unknown. We don't know what they're going to face when they get out into the workforce. So we have to prepare them to understand theory, principles, concepts, procedures that guide the practice of strategic communications, along with a heavy dose of ethics, because we believe that it's important that our students, communication is a very powerful tool. I don't have to tell you, Edward. And so it's important that our students understand right from wrong when they're formulating messaging and communication strategies. And so we prepare them for that, for what they're going to face in the future. So we don't use specific case studies. We use case studies as exemplars, as examples, to give them an idea of how others have approached the topics. And so what our students do is they actually pick as a team. The crisis communications course is a team course. and they'll actually agree on a client that they want to plan for. And so the plans are as varied as the companies that the students choose. I think that we don't have to worry too much about whether or not they're up to date, because almost always the students are picking companies that are in the news or have experienced a recent crisis themselves. Um, Now, to give you an example, some of the last class that we had, students worked on Southwest Airlines. Topics included potential crises that they looked at were worker strikes, product failures, scheduling issues, or things that we're not we're familiar with in the news. Another group in that class picked Tesla and locking. They considered potential crises, crises that included a loss of shareholder confidence, battery shortages, system malfunctions, and a third group picked Elf Cosmetics, and they worked with and their one of the crises they were looking at was skin reaction complexities that they had. So the students are taking a variety of different kinds of issues of companies and scanning the environment, doing all the things that they're learning how to do in the coursework to offer them a sound messaging strategy, a sound um, communication strategy, and also product development. As part of the coursework as well as developing actual products for the particular crises that they're looking at.
So, do the students have free reign to choose any kind of crisis that they want to take a look at, or do you provide scenarios and examples for them to consider, or is it a combination of both?
No, so yeah, that's a good no. So the students actually pick their own. That's part of the deal. Like in their final course, when they're taking their capstone course, the client that they pick is up to them. And so it's not unlike it is in real life, where if you're an independent practitioner, you're picking and choosing your clients. You're scanning the environment and you're saying these are clients that might need my services, right? And so that's what our students are doing. So no, we don't tell them what client to pick.
Give us a big picture overview, if you would, Mitch, about the program. How long has this been around? How many students go through it every year, and what's your role?
Okay, so the program has been around since about 2020. There are about 300 students in the program. About half of them are taking courses at any one time. We offer courses 4 times a year. And so about half of them are taking courses at any one time. And my role is I'm proud to say I developed the program. And so I'm the executive producer, if you will. And I developed the program, and then I worked with a group of subject matter experts, scholar practitioners, adjunct faculty, uh, consulted with other people in the academic and in the work field, work environment on the development of the course. What do students need to know? What are employers expecting graduate students, master's degree holders, to be able to do when they get into the workplace? Well, if an employer is hiring a public relations professional, what do they expect that person to be able to do if they're holding a master's degree? And so we built the course around that. The course, as I mentioned earlier, has 5 6-hour courses, and it starts with the foundations of the career field. and that's probably the most theory-like course in the curriculum. And we talk about the history of communications, strategic communications, and how it's evolved over the years to go from basically public relations or publicists to public relations to strategic communications that are working with the entire corporate company or organization to put out effective communications on behalf of the company. So that's the foundations course, and then they go from foundations, and they have another whole 6-hour course on product development. The different kinds of products that they're that they will have to produce, and also, since we expect them to be in a leadership role, since we believe they'll be in leadership roles, uh, they need to know what good looks like, so that when their subordinates or the people they're hiring or the consultants that they're hiring uh, uh, produce a product, they know what a good product is, and if it's meeting the messaging requirements of the communications plan. So they have a course completely devoted to product development, and then there's a third course in management and leadership, and it's another 6-hour course in in everything from working with HR to create and defend the need for a strategic communications organization inside of another organization. And if you're creating a new one, all the politics that are involved in convincing other elements of the organization that you belong in there, and how you fit in with them, how creating a management plan, how you're going to work with other elements of the company or organization, and how you expect your organization, the communications organization, to function. So that'll be the third course. And then the fourth course is the crisis communications course, the one that we're talking about. And here the students work as a team, because crisis communications is a team. Everything we do in communications is team effort, but especially so in crisis communications, where everybody has to know what everybody else is doing. And so they work as a team throughout the course. There is one project that is an individual project at the end, but otherwise everything is a team project, and they have to work as a team to get all of the different elements of strategic crisis communications done within this framework of a 12-week term. This is a lot to do, and so they do all of that work, and then of course they have to come up with an evaluation plan as well, both a formative evaluation plan, to help guide their efforts as they're implementing the plan. You need to be measuring along the way in case you need to adjust your messaging or your communication strategies or your tactics along the way. And so you have the formative part of the evaluation, and then you have at the end, after the organization has gotten back to normal, you want to take some time summatively afterwards and take a look at what you did and what you did well and what you didn't, what you can improve on. So that's the crisis communications course. And the very last course, just quickly, is the capstone course. This is where the student takes on the role of project manager, chief communications officer, finds a client, independent public relations professional, finds a client, actually interviews the client, tries to understand the client's communications needs, and then does everything that they've learned to create a communications plan and a measurement plan to go along with it.
Well, of course, there are lots of crisis communication classes at universities and colleges around the country. What makes your program different from how others received their education in this important discipline?
So I think that what separates us is the fact that we have made an overt effort, built it into the curriculum to train not only expert practitioners, but also to train tomorrow's leaders. When a graduate from the University of Maryland Global Campus is ready to go to work and lead a team of communicators to meet either the corporate goals, or if it's in an agency, to lead a team for on behalf of a client. I think that's what separates us from almost every other university. Very few of them that I am aware of, and they all have excellent programs, so don't misunderstand me. But most of them are focused on creating that master practitioner, and we focus on that, but we also want to create tomorrow's leader.
So, how do you determine what the basic curriculum consists of? Who makes those decisions, and how do you ensure that the content matches what the needs of employers are in the real world?
So we use a combination of competency-based and mastery learning models, and that provides our students with a curriculum that produces not only masters of the profession, master practitioners, but also guarantees to our employers that they are getting students who are able to do the things that they need in the workplace. They need people who are master practitioners, but who also can lead other communicators in their work. So our curriculum is specifically designed to be able to do that.
And what about technology? Some aspect of new and emerging technologies always seem to be a part of the important tools that crisis communicators use to tackle a crisis. What technology, such as augmented reality, is part of the curriculum for your students?
Yeah, that's another great question, Edward, and I'm so glad you asked, actually, because we are indeed experimenting with these new technologies. We know for a fact that newspapers and other print publications are using, or at least experimenting with the use of augmented reality in their publications, and the university is leaning forward. And in fact, we're very proud of the fact that we're like one of 10 universities that are a part of an experiment that's led by Meta and a consortium of other high tech industries and platforms to look at virtual reality. So we are heavily, we're experimenting with virtual reality in the classroom, trying to ascertain whether or not it actually makes a difference, if it's helpful, and in what ways is it helpful to enhance student learning. And I'm pleased to say that two courses. It's a 2 year experiment. We're in year one, and in this first year, two communications courses, one speech course and one journalism course, have been selected to participate in the experiment. We're looking at a number of different aspects of virtual reality in the classroom. We're looking at social interaction. How does virtual reality um, affect the social interactions among our students? And this is especially important for an online university. And what we anecdotally have found. Remember, we're only in 1 year of a 2 year experiment. One of the things that we have found is that it does seem to be having an impact on student participation in the discussion sections of the online discussion sections. Uh, we It's too early to be able to say this scientifically, of course, but we have noticed that uptick, and so we're anxious to hear from other courses that are also part of the experiment and to learn whether or not that is something that we can uh, that we can that will help us understand how virtual reality can help in the classroom. And then of course virtual reality. Then there's the actual immersion of uh, of virtual reality, the ability to actually get into the environment, uh, lose the sense of disbelievability, if you will, right? And just to immerse the student in what's going on, so that to them it seems so real. We know that nursing students are taking a look at actually how to perform the procedures that they perform on patients. Uh, and we have built or are building, almost finished, a crime lab. There's a uh, 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 cadaver room, and then there's for the now that's not the criminal justice students can use the cadaver room, but it's mostly for the nursing students and the other healthcare practitioners students. The criminal justice students are taking advantage of a room that is being built. It's called the crime lab, and it immerses their criminal justice students in in the kind of work that they have to do at a crime scene. Pretty amazing. And then one of the things now, and one of the things that we're looking at, maybe next year, who knows? We'll see. But one of the things that I'm entering discussions about is having an interdisciplinary interactions between my communications and journalism students and the criminal justice students who are at the crime scene, so that the reporters, the news writing course, for example, students can go interview, go to the crime scene and interview the criminal justice students who are conducting the investigation. And interesting, because as you know, in an ongoing investigation, they shouldn't be saying too much, but we'll see.
Well, talking about and using technology in a classroom is one thing, but translating it into how it work in the real world is something completely different. Can you give us
Yeah.
an example of how virtual reality or other augmented technologies could be used in a recent crisis, such as the Norfolk Southern train derailment in Ohio?
Well, certainly, if we can build the environment, or an environment that can be substituted for the train wreck, we can actually bring the students there, and they can uh, look at. They can do everything but smell. Maybe someday we can do that, But they can look at, touch, and walk around the area, and get their own sense of what's going on, what's happening, and then they can interview. Now, at first, until AI gets a little more advanced, it's a little hard to have an AI um, spokesperson, let's say train company spokesperson, talk to my students. But if we put the students in the place um, of the PR professional, uh, when AI allows it, they can be talking to company officials, and get the sense of what actually happened, get the big picture by talking to the different people, and then come back. They can come back to their offices. We can set up an office, and they can discuss among themselves, and put together their plan, and then they can go brief their plan to the C-suite. They can do all that stuff by virtual reality. Once all that stuff is built, right? You have to build it first, and so once it's built, then you can go ahead and do that. And then the other thing is, then we can put those PR professionals in front of the press, and eventually, eventually, it's beginning to emerge. I don't want, but it's not, we're not there yet, but it's beginning to emerge, at least the ideas, the concepts that we can talk to technical people to help build this stuff. We can build a press conference area where the PR professional, the student, can give a briefing and then get questions asked of it. Right now, we have to kind of depend on me and other live people to ask the questions, as part members of the audience. But eventually, why not have AI, artificial intelligence characters ask context-related questions, or I can preload questions, and to have them asked. So that will give our students such tremendous experience in actually doing the work of the PR professional without the danger of screwing up, right?
Technology aside, are there any other ways in which the students have an opportunity to practice applying what they learn to a real world crisis situation, such as doing a group conversation on Zoom or other video platforms, or when they have an opportunity to meet in person doing tabletop exercises?
So in the online program, typically the answer is no. We encourage our instructors, however, to host office hours, and where where they feel it's helpful to have a Zoom. All the instructors have Zoom available to them. The university provides Zoom accounts for all of our instructors, but it's not a part of the curriculum. The curriculum is online, and like I said, we're experimenting with VR and hopefully with AR one day. Right now, our focus is on VR.
What pointers do you think that the government executives and corporate leaders could pick up from what the students are learning about crisis communications and crisis management?
Yeah, I think that our students will get to their C-suite leadership and convince them to constantly scan their environment. What is going on in their companies that could become a threat to the company? And in doing so, they're also going to find things that are weaknesses and opportunities for those companies. So I'm very hopeful that our communications students, when they get out into the workplace and become leaders in their communications organizations, that they will be able to convince their leadership to scan the environment and to prioritize the planning efforts. You can't do everything all at once. We know that. Time is limited, budgets are limited. You have to be able to prioritize. And so I'm hopeful that our students will help our C-suite leaders prioritize the issues that they need to plan for and address. And then the last thing that I hope that that leaders will take away: practice. Once you've scanned your environment and you've prioritized your communications needs, practice, practice, practice. Because when the time comes that you need the entire team, and as you point out, Edward, in your book and over again, crisis management is more than just the communications effort. It's everybody working together in the organization to solve whatever caused the crisis, to solve that problem and get back to work as normal as quickly as possible. And if your team is not used to working with one another, if the only time they ever see each other is when they're in a crisis, they're going to make mistakes and they're going to say the wrong thing. They're not going to keep track of some communication, some news reporter calling in and asking a question. There's something, they're not going to be coordinating their answers. And that leaves the public confused and unsure, and depending on the crisis, perhaps a little, afraid, certainly concerned. And so I hope that our leaders take away the need when their communications professional comes to them and says, we need to practice this, that they set aside the time for the company to practice.
Do you think the students would face the same challenges in the government sector as they would in the private sector?
Oh, absolutely. Many of my students are in the government sector. And so it's, not unusual that that the topics that they might pick could be government related topics.
I'm afraid we're almost out of time, Mitch, but as a last question, what's the most important takeaway about how the University of Maryland trains the next generation of crisis communications that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
I would like to share with them that communications needs to be strategic. And we teach that to our students. And they practice that. And they are getting students that are practiced in helping their organizations identify potential crises, planning for them. And of course, that means planning for everyday work as well, right? I mean, everyday kinds of activities that come up, but planning that our students are expert in planning. They're expert in product development. They understand how to evaluate and make the next plan and implementation even better.
Well, Mitch, I really enjoyed our conversation today, and thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you, Edward. It was truly a pleasure.
That's it for this edition of Crisis Ahead. My guest today was Mitch Marovitz, a collegiate professor and director of the Communications, Journalism, and Speech program at the University of Maryland Global Campus. Be sure to come back next week for more advice and insights on preparing for, managing, and recovering from a crisis. Or subscribe to Crisis Ahead wherever you get podcasts. Each week I interview government officials, corporate executives, and experts who share their advice and insights about a variety of crisis management and crisis communications related topics. Recent guests have included Jay Johnson, the former Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. I've also interviewed Isabella Guzman, the Administrator of the Small Business Administration, and officials of the Department of Defense and the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Future shows will cover such timely topics as how and why CEOs should be seen and heard during a crisis, the importance of trust when responding to crisis situations, and how to measure your organization's vulnerability to a crisis. Be sure to read my articles about crisis-related issues, news, and topics on Forbes.com, where I'm a leadership strategy senior contributor. Remember, it's not a matter of if a crisis will hit your organization or company, it's when. And the sooner you are prepared for it, the better.
Produced by Heartcast Media.